Hello, everybody. We are live now. Welcome to the first live session. Welcome to the first live session of RRFI, the Respiratory Research Foundation of India. We intend to conduct one session bi-weekly to increase our interaction with the people and discuss topics which are of interest to the common man. The Respiratory Research Foundation of India was founded in 2001 with the motto that TB is curable, asthma is controllable, and smoking is avoidable by Dr. R. Narasimhan, who is the founder chairman of the Respiratory Research Foundation of India and also senior interventional pulmonologist at Apollo Hospitals, Chennai. When the corona pandemic started, we were all reluctant to admit that it is going to be a big problem. But when it hit us in the face, it was like a jolt to us and woke us up from deep slumber. 6 months in the pandemic, we find ourselves lost with no visible endpoint in the near future. To add to the panic, we have too much of information from various sources, official and unofficial. Today, we have with us Dr. R. Narasimhan, Chairman of the Respiratory Research Foundation of India, to speak to us about what life is going to be like after Corona and answer some questions which you all might have. To all of you who are listening, I hope we are audible and you can post your questions in the chat box. We will try to answer and cover all of your questions in the given time. So without wasting much time, let us move on to the program. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
I'll be starting with a question myself. In our country, we have crossed recently 500,000 cases. This number is very, very scary. What does it mean to the general public? Do you think we are losing the battle against the virus?
Yeah, numbers are always very. I don't think we should think that we are losing or winning in this battle because there are no winners or losers in this fight. The virus has entered the country and I don't think it will go without completing its schedule. It has a schedule to play. People originally thought that virus, when it came, will be able to block it, control it, eliminate it. But now we have now realized that the virus has come to stay, and for that we have done fairly well. The numbers are not to be worried at all because this is expected in a population of 130 billion. This is something to be expected because, as you see, the majority of the cases that we are seeing are all asymptomatic people. I don't think there is any big cause for worry. The numbers do not worry me at all. But what worries me or what worry me would be the death rates. As long as the death rates are under control, I don't think these numbers are going to matter at all. The public should not bother about the numbers.
Okay, thank you. So, we now know or we have come to understand that Corona is here to stay. What would be your opinion about living with Corona? Because after all, that is what this talk is all about. What do you think? How the life is going to be and what will be your opinion about living with Corona?
Yeah, I think we have to learn to live with the virus, the numbers, the media, and so many factors that are going to worry us for a very long period. But one thing that we should understand is, as I said in my first answer itself, that the virus has come to stay and it is going to do its job and it is going to spread across the community. There is no way you can stop it. India being such a large population, the virus is going to spread unhindered. But what should worry us is only the death rate. So death rate is not very high. So we should not worry greatly about it. What we should know is we should learn with how to control. There are three important things with which we should learn to live with. One is the mask. The face mask is the universal mask is one thing that one should learn to live with it. And the second is the hand wash, which is extremely important, keeping the hands clean. And third and most important is the social distancing, which again would be a luxury in a developing country like ours. But these three are the most important method with which one has to learn with it. And the face mask would be there for some time to come because that's the best known way of preventing the virus from entering the lungs. Because we know that this virus is a respiratory virus. It finds its way through the nose and the lungs, through the mouth into the lungs, and creates a problem of a COVID pneumonia with all its attendant problems. So if you can prevent the entry of virus into your nose and the respiratory system, I think we are going to have won half the war in controlling this virus. So these are some of the points which one should learn to live with it. There will be no semas for some time. There will be no congregations. There will be no big time festivals where people meet and have big gatherings. These things are to be definitely contained and curtailed, and that's the way we have to live for another 4 or 5 months. So,
Okay.
and one more point I thought I should add here is the lockdown part. The lockdown is one of the extreme forms of social distancing. That is one of the best ways by which we brought down the control to a very large extent. Otherwise, we have seen the kind of deaths that we saw in other countries. We did lockdown early on so that we contained the virus spread in the community. But there is no way we can prevent this. Once you release the lockdown period is only to prepare ourselves medically in case a deluge of cases occur, what should be done and how the testing to be done, what testing should be done. A lot of parts had to be learned because as I said, this virus is a relatively new virus. We don't have much data about it. We don't have any vaccine for it. We don't have a drug for it. So we need some preparation. Lockdown was an extremely good step in that sense. So that lockdown will be continued for some time in a different form, in a reduced format, like I said, there cannot be movies, cinemas, congregations, and so on.
So then that comes to a very raging question now. Should there be another lockdown? Because what we are going through now, again, we did not expect this lockdown right now, but a lot of people are still for the idea of a lockdown. But what is your opinion, doctor? Should there be another lockdown?
Yeah. Lockdown, I said, is one of the best means of social distancing. It is an extreme form of social distancing. But lockdown alone will not solve the problem. Lockdown will not cure the disease. Lockdown will only give some time for the people to prepare themselves for the hospital beds, for the ventilators, for acquiring drugs, for acquiring PPE kits, and so on. We equip ourselves during this lockdown period. But an extreme lockdown period also is not a very good idea because it will hit the economy of the person. The daily wage earners will be badly affected. The earnings will be affected. A lot of economic repercussions will be there in continuing the lockdown. As a medical man, I would say lockdown is the good way of trying to control the disease. But I must tell you, lockdown only postpones. Lockdown does not cure the disease. In my opinion, if you want the epidemic or this pandemic to go on very fast, you must let this infection to spread around in the community slowly. and the elderly people have to be prevented or that be told that they must stay at home. They should not come out and prevent themselves from getting exposed to the virus. That way you can come down on the mortality and also get some herd immunity by letting the young people get into the community slowly. So lockdown is a double-edged sword, but lockdown should not be repeated too often. That's my opinion.
Okay. So according to your opinion, I think the disease, we should let the disease run its course. And so then we don't know really when this will happen. But we are always talking about flattening the curve. When do you think India is likely to achieve the peak and then fall down? Or you think will there be a peak and then it will come down, or is the curve going to be flattened as we are all reading in the papers and the internet? When is India likely to achieve the peak?
So in many epidemiologists' opinion, they say that there will not be one peak in India. There will be several peaks. Say Chennai will achieve peak at one time, Mumbai will achieve at another time, Delhi at another time. It will be different for each state or maybe different for each city also. It all depends upon various factors, the density of the population, the geographical location, the seasonal variation. So many other factors come into play with regards to the peak. So now as we see the numbers are picking up in Delhi and Chennai and Mumbai, kind of some flattening is being seen. Chennai and Delhi are reaching their peak, and once they reach the peak and they start flattening out. So the estimates, general estimates of most of the epidemiologists is that it is likely to peak. Chennai is likely to peak sometime around August, the first week of August or the mid-August it might peak, and then the cases will start coming down.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. They say that the virus has mutated and the strains have multiplied. Will this and what impact would this have on the present scenario?
Actually, there are no different viruses. There is only one virus. One coronavirus is there, and that one coronavirus has infected across the world in a pandemic manner. But what determines whether one develops a serious infection or an asymptomatic carrier status or a serious disease status is his inherent immunity. The inherent immunity of the individual seems to be pretty high in India. This is due to various factors. One of the factors which I have been telling is the BCG vaccination, which gives certain amount of non-specific immunity. One of the reasons why the death rates are quite low in our country. There is also a theory that's going around that people who have been exposed to these rubella vaccines and measles vaccines also do not develop the kind of the serious disease which others are developing. This cited as this measles and rubella vaccination is cited to be as one of the reasons why the incidence of serious COVID infections is less in children. It has not been proven yet, but one of the reasons that they have mentioned that the incidence is relatively less in them. So the question of virus mutating does not arise at all. Because the inherent immunity of the individual is pretty high, we have not seen the kind of serious problem which other countries have witnessed.
Okay. And then I think coming back to the lockdown, there was one question. Why are the numbers increasing in spite of a strict lockdown, especially the current one in Chennai?
Yeah, the lockdown does not decrease the number of infections. Lockdown only prevents the people from coming out in the open, and the testings are being done in containment zones, and we have fever clinics. In those fever clinics, the tests are being done in contained areas. So there definitely, if you do go and do in these particular areas, the numbers will be definitely more during this period. And once you release the lockdown period, people start coming out, and again there will be a surge of infections. So as I had mentioned, lockdown does not cure the disease, but it only prevents the disease from coming inside the house from outside. That's one of the ways of preventing it. But whether that kind of a thing is really beneficial now at this stage is debatable.
Okay. So there is a lot of confusion about testing. More tests, less tests. We all have different opinions about that. Which, according to you, is the best testing strategy one should adopt? And similarly, one person has a question. A lot of corona patients we see in the internet or read in the papers that they get positive again in a gap of 1 or 2 months. What do you think about the testing strategy and whether we should be testing people again? All that.
Yeah. So there are two ways of looking at these tests. When the epidemic or the pandemic started, test is the priority. Because by testing, we know where we actually stand and what actually is our problem. We'll get to know the number, the real number actually. At that point of time, our testing numbers were relatively less because we had to acquire the test and start doing them. So at that time, what we do by test. Once we know the positive, we can isolate, quarantine, and prevent the spread among the community. But since we are not doing that during that period, our best move was a lockdown. So when the lockdown was done, even though we did not do much, we could prevent quite a number, but the infections were still happening. But now, after the lockdown, I think we ramped up our tests like anything, and the test numbers have gone up, and we are picking up more and more. It is 4 or 5 months now since the pandemic has started. We are in a different stage now. We are at a stage where we are getting serious cases in hospitals across the country. Many serious cases are coming up. Now I think, like ICMR has said, the priority should be to test only those that have illnesses. In my opinion, the best opinion is to test only those who have an illness, because you should be able to identify whether this person has a COVID pneumonia or a non-COVID pneumonia. This way, we will not miss any non-COVID pneumonias too, and also plan treating for COVID pneumonias. And the second thing is, it does not look economically feasible for a country like ours to go on testing in containment zones and also trying to isolate at this stage of it. That's my opinion. Though no doubt test is extremely important, but we are at a stage where we should try to diagnose the disease and treat the disease rather than picking up an asymptomatic carrier and isolate him and give him treatment and try to contain others and so on. This is what my personal take on that. And there is one more question was asked. Somebody asked, people get the disease again, are testing positive again. This is one of the reasons why we are telling them not to test the people who have recovered well, because sometimes you may find even dead viruses, and the dead viruses also can show as positive reports in your nature file questionnaires. Just say if you are improved well, if you have become asymptomatic, you recovered well, you are getting discharged, means there is no need for a test for such patients. Okay, there is one question you told me that chances of recurrence in the same patient. That is extremely rare. It does not happen. Chance of recurrence does not happen. But after becoming after becoming asymptomatic, after becoming virus free, after the RT-PCR is negative sometimes when you do, if the CT scan is showing lung changes, because lung is the one that gets badly affected, they remain symptomatic for a fairly long period. It does not mean that they have disease. There are instances of people who had 14 days or 12 days of fever who have been managed at home only without development of any lung problems.
Now that we have spoken about lung problems, we have a question. What are the chances of permanent lung damage among patients who recover after severe COVID infection?
That only remains to be seen, because as I said, the lung is affected in two ways. One is the interstitium and the lung parenchyma gets affected. They present as some kind of a crazy pavement and the interstitial lung pattern where the saturation is very low. Here I must make a mention that in COVID there is a situation called a silent hypoxia, or some people call it as a happy hypoxia, wherein the saturation can be quite low, 84 and 85, but the patient remains relatively symptom-free. That's one of the biggest problems of this. That's why many sudden deaths can occur in such patients. This hypoxia, one, there's a lung parenchymal effect, and the other people, it affects the blood vessels. So when it affects the blood vessels, they develop some kind of a vascular pathologies. And some people develop some kind of a cytokine storm, and they also develop the lung problem. So when all these serious lung problems occur, they can develop some serious damage to the lung. But this remains to be seen because this is a relatively new disease. We have identified that it causes a lung parenchymal change. And what happens to this disease in the long run is something that is to be watched. Maybe some studies would come up which will throw up the damages, like it has happened in Bhopal gas tragedy where we picked up some serious kinds of diseases which occurred after that. We also have to wait and see for the results to come, for the long-term effects of these corona-related lung problems.
Okay. So, I have one more question. Epidemiologists differ in their opinions with regard to the statistics in India. What is your opinion with regard to these numbers, death rates, and case fatality rates? So, because we have spoken about numbers already, but each day we get a different person talking their own opinion. So, we just want your opinion regarding that.
Actually, there is not a great difference between what the epidemiologists tell. There are two or three, if I am right. One is Raman Lakshminarayan one, and another is Ashish Jha from US, and Jayaprakash Noel one. There are some more from India. More or less, most of them are giving a similar impression about the numbers only. But what's most important is we should see their numbers against the background of our population. So one of the epidemiologists has said that we will have about 200,000 cases by September. It's not surprising with our population so much. As many people keep telling, for a country to develop a herd immunity, about 50 to 60% of the population has to have an infection. Because we don't have a vaccine for this disease. Because when you don't have a vaccine for this disease, we depend only on the herd immunity. The herd immunity will come only when about 50 to 60% of the population get affected. What we have now is a very small percentage of our population. We have a population of 130 million, right? And which means the numbers that we have now over 500,000 cases is not a big deal. But there are some areas, according to Jayaprakash Mulay, some other epidemiologists feel certain amount of herd immunity is being seen by the serological surveys which are being done in our country. But as I said, most of these people have said about the numbers only. I always see the numbers against the background of the population. You see, if you look at our population, we are the second largest populous country in the world. And when this second largest populous country in the world, our infection numbers are going to be stunningly high. And I am not surprised that these epidemiologists have given these numbers. But the numbers only are worrying for us. But you must look at these numbers against the background of the population that you must look at. In a similar way, if you look at the mortality rates also, the mortality rates in our country is very, very low. The case fatality rate also is extremely low because we first step is we isolated people very well in the early phase of the illness itself. That was number one. Number two is the BCG vaccination that has given us some kind of a protection also has brought down the mortality, has kept the mortality rate at acceptably low levels. And also there are certain treatment schedules that are available. Now we have got certain treatments, certain drugs are available, though a lot of controversies have been raised about the use or non-use of drugs. But in my opinion, as a clinician, I think something is better than nothing. Psychologically, we feel that we are doing something for the patient. And if that happens, the serious fatality rate can be brought down. As I said, what we are worried about, if you look at health ministry's thing, there are 90% of the patients are asymptomatic. Only about 5% come to the hospital. 5% out of that, only half of that only need oxygen support, and out of them, still another half of it only need a ventilator support. and only a very few succumb to the disease. So if you take that range and then see, we have done extremely well. We need not think, we need not worry that we have not done well. We have done fairly well with our first lockdown, and then the availability of the and then we are lucky to have the BCG vaccination as a mass vaccine program. So that to some extent that's helpful, and also to some extent the availability of the drugs that also has caused certain good things for our in our fight against this pandemic. It is helping us along.
We have one question about the triple mantra. We all know about this triple mantra SMS: sanitizer, mask, and social distancing. Which, according to you, is the most important of the three? And we also have questions regarding whether these masks should be worn at home. Do you think the mask should be worn at home, especially in people who have elderly people at home, the houses where they have elderly people and they might not be able to practice a great level of social distancing? Do you think these masks should be worn at home also? And what is important? Sanitizer, mask, and social distancing.
Yeah, right. The SMS mantra, no doubt, is extremely good. It's an extremely good way of fighting this virus. So, in this, let us first talk about the masks at home. Yeah, that's a very important question. My opinion, masks at home are not essential if there are no corona patients. But in a house where you have 3 generations of people or 4 generations, in our country we have a great grandfather, grandfather, father, and grandchildren all living in the same house, but the social distancing may be a luxury in such situations. So, in such situations, if when the lockdown is down or when the lockdown is relaxed, when the youngsters go out and then come into the house, even though they wear a mask, there is a chance that this person might be coming back with some virus. So in such a situation, if there are old people who are on the wrong side of 70, 75, 76, it is better they wear a mask at home too. One. Number two, if anyone in the flat complex or anybody this is tested as positive, it is better they wear a mask. It affects the people with comorbids, people who are aged, people who are diabetes, people who have hypertension, people who have post-transplant situations, anti-hypertension. Only these people are affected. So people after 70 years should know to take care of themselves by wearing a mask. So this becomes a very, very important thing for people who are aged above 70 years, number one, or where the social distancing is a difficult thing. In such situations, masking becomes a very good thing. Right. Second, masking at home becomes a very useful tip for these people. Otherwise, using mask when there are no corona patients, a small family of 4 where there are no corona patients, all homebound, one is taking extra care when he's going out, there is no need for a mask. On the other hand, wearing a mask is an extremely important thing once they come out of the house. Masking, universal masking, I say. I personally feel that masking did not get the kind of importance that it should get as the testing is getting. Many people talk more about testing, but nowadays we do find, but masking from the beginning it did not get. The test got priority right from day one. People said testing should be done. We are doing less testing, we are doing more testing, more tests have to be done, ramping up has to be done. But for masks, there were divergent opinions. People said masks are important only for healthcare officials. And normal people need not wear masks. Then we said you can use the handkerchiefs as your mask. Then we use surgical masks. N95 is not necessary. Even as recently as say for a month back, I think WHO gave a statement that masks need not be used if one is not in the crowds or something like that. So there are a lot of divergence, but in my opinion, masks should be given the utmost importance in preventing the disease because, as I said, it is a respiratory virus. When one talks, when one breathes, when one sneezes, when one coughs, viruses are expelled out. When the viruses are expelled, when it touches it, it comes closer to the face, it can enter through the nose and cause a problem. So if you have a face mask, it will prevent the virus entering into the nose and then into the mouth and then on its way to the lungs. So mask is no doubt is an important mantra to prevent, to keep this virus away. Then hand washing, you ask. So how does the hand washing help? So sanitizer and hand washing. Between the sanitizing and hand washing, I prefer a hand washing is important because you can put a soap and then wash the hand on the waves for about 20 seconds. If you do that, it will be a good way. And we generally tell patients to wash for 5 to 6 times a day. Use that. What is this number? 5 to 6 times a day is number. This number of 5 to 6 times we tell because in a 24 hours day schedule, we sleep for about 6 hours. Let us imagine you have about 18 hours. So in this 18 hours of time, we'll be touching a lot of surfaces. Say if you are climbing stairs, you'll be touching the rails, or you'll be touching the doors, or you'll be touching your key points, computer points, door knobs, all these places you'll be touching. And after touching that, if something is there, the time for the from hand to the respiration is about 4 hours. If you're wearing a mask constantly, if you keep washing your hands once in 5 or 6 hours, whatever virus that enters into your hands does not enter the mouth system. So that way we can prevent. So we have realized, so one can realize the importance of masking in this, and also the hand washing quite frequently, 5 to 6 hours a day. Frequency, I mean 5 to 6 hours a day, one can wash and keep the things clear. There would not be any problem. And as I said, there is no way the corona can enter if you practice this mask and the hand washing. And social distancing, the important way of social distancing is the Indian way of celebrations like big time marriages, and the cinema halls, malls, and big festivals, congregations. If you prevent, you can maintain the social distancing. That way you can have a very good control of this disease for a long time to come.
We have a question from the public. What is the state of vaccine development? To what extent mutation inhibits vaccine development process? And is it true about the rampant mutation happening across different demographics?
The rampant mutations occurring across demographics is something that has not been proven yet. We are just telling it as an observation because of the differing mortality rates. But this is bound to occur in a country like India with different geographic locations. It will be different in each and every place. The vaccine development, it will easily take about 1 to 1.5 years for the vaccine to reach the market because it goes through various trials, the phase 1, 2, 3, 4 trials, and before it is accepted as one of the safe means, it will take a long time. It takes easily about 1.5 to 2 years, though there are a lot of methods to expedite the virus, the viral antiviral vaccine, corona vaccines as fast as possible. It will take easily 1 to 1.5 years actually. But in the meantime, there are a lot of people who are thinking of vaccinating with getting vaccinated with BCG and MMRs and so on, but they have not been proven. But they must be having some kind of a role in that. But the corona vaccines, it will take still a long time to come.
Okay. We have one more question here. Does rapid antibody testing help in case of COVID-19 tests being positive continuously for 2 or 3 times? How important is the rapid antibody test in our country?
Rapid antibody test has a lot of limitations in that. A serological survey being done to assess the status of the disease in the country is a different ballgame than trying to diagnose this disease by a rapid antibody test. The rapid antibody negativity or negativity does not mean it does not have a disease. If you have a rapid antibody positivity, you need to check. If you have neutralizing antibodies in your serum, it means that you have developed an immunity to that disease. Otherwise, it is up. That is why they have not taken off the way they should take off.
Okay. There seems to be a lot of fear about the disease. We hear about streets being cordoned off and people not being allowed into their flats once they know that they are corona positive. What do you think about the stigma surrounding the disease? It's a very important, become a very important social problem more than a medical problem.
Yeah, the stigma is there because when the disease came, we did not know much about the disease. Let's say, for example, if we take measles or chickenpox, we knew about the virus, we knew about its infectivity, we knew about its disease. But when corona hit us, we did not know much about this. That is the reason we were very strict in the beginning. I think people would have known that if that person traveling in a train was tested positive, whole train, the passengers in the whole coach had to be tested for corona. The whole bus had to be, the whole plane had to be tested. And I think in our own city we found the Phoenix Mall. We found when the Phoenix Mall was. They found one of the staff was infected. They traced each and every person. They went to the extent of tracing each and every person visited during a particular period and went on. So that was the kind of contact tracing that we used to do. And similarly with regards to flat, if somebody is found positive, go and put a barricade there. All these things they were all very essential in the early phase of the disease. That's one of the reasons why in Chennai, if you take in Tamil Nadu, if you take, though our numbers are staggeringly high, our mortality rate is quite low actually. It is quite low only because of our excellent testing in the beginning and also the contact tracing. And you can see comparison with Maharashtra, though they keep comparing the other states. You cannot compare Tamil Nadu with other states because we have done excellent testing. Our testing numbers are extremely high in the country. We have done so many tests and our mortality is quite low because contact tracing. But now we have reached at a stage, I don't think there is that kind of a stigma attached, but still the fear is always there. Many people are afraid of coming out and telling that they have a fever because they have a fear of the corporation, police, all these people running after them and barricading them. But nowadays it is not that much. In the early phase it was there. Nowadays it is not there. It is probably because our awareness levels are increased. There are teams which are spreading the news that corona is not a thing to be worried about. Majority of the people are asymptomatic. They don't develop disease. Only people with comorbids can contact, when they contact an infection, they can develop a disease. This kind of an awareness that is going on.
So as a follow-up to that question, I have one more question. We hear a lot about patients not coming to the hospital for fear of catching COVID-19. In this situation, do you think other diseases are being neglected by the patients and healthcare providers? And what would you advise the people when they have a medical problem that might not be corona?
This is an extremely important question. With corona, we are thinking that it is only, we have all forgotten about other diseases. We think corona is the only thing that is prevalent now, and either it is corona or non-corona, COVID or non-COVID. That's what we are thinking of. In the process, definitely we will be missing a lot of diseases. What we should not miss is people with dialysis. Many people are afraid of coming to hospital. I remember when I gave interviews in TV, people have asked me, is it safe to come to hospital? I used to tell them it is never unsafe to come to hospital. Corona is like any other cold like virus only, but its infectivity is pretty high. Its infectivity is pretty high, and it doesn't cause much of the symptom. There are more asymptomatic carriers, so there is no fear of other. One should not fear that the hospitals which treat corona, if they go there, if they get operated, they will develop diseases, they will get corona and other things. Because the hospitals which do this, which do take care of these non-COVID cases, take extreme care to say that disease does not spread. And as I said, COVID wards, COVID ICUs are all completely separated, and all utmost precautions are taken in all those things. So one should not worry about the disease increasing or catching the disease and so on when you have a disease. On the other hand, say with people with tuberculosis, if you have tuberculosis, we know TB needs to be treated for a period of 6 months, and they take for 2 months, and because of this lockdown, because of the hospital closure, because of the extreme fear of going out and getting a corona infection, they don't take the TB medications. What will happen is that TB can increase. Not only that, the disease can become resistant. Not only that, it can spread the disease to others also. So it is not a wise thing not to go to the hospitals for other serious illnesses. Similarly, the cancer, chemotherapy, and so on. They must meet their doctor because doctor is their ultimate and the best friend and best advisor in such situations. So they should not neglect. Nobody should neglect other diseases because by neglecting, I am sure we are going to see more problems after the corona is over. We'll see more non-COVID problems in the hospitals.
Thank you. That was actually very helpful. I hope the people got the message on that. We have a lot of questions about the immunity levels. There are people who are asking whether any drugs can be taken to boost immunity. Well, vitamin D enhances immunity, and people have asked if immunity level is high, can we escape being infected? Or what do you suggest about this immunity thing and immunoboosters and all that stuff? Are they really effective, or is it a good diet and healthy practices that is more important than the immunity level? Or is there any way to measure that?
The immunity, as I said, is one of the important means of keeping one away from disease. It may be in the form of vitamin C, or it may be in the form of zinc, or it may be turmeric in the milk. There are so many ways of pushing up the immunity of the individual. And improving one's immunity is always good to counteract any disease, not only the corona viruses. So I still remember my grandmother or my grandfather used to tell me, take milk with haldi, which is good for your immunity. We can't just blow off saying that they have got no role. They have a role to play. But the specific question that has to be answered is whether these immunity boosters, now if you take, would it help the corona infection or would it help cure the corona disease? That will not happen because corona, as I said, is a virus for which there are no real drugs are available until say a month. Now there are some drugs available. I think people are seeing in the market there is a hydroxychloroquine, though controversial, is giving as a prophylaxis. There are drugs like Favipiravir has come, remdesivir. A lot of new things have come. That is one of the reasons why our mortality rates are quite low. You can see compared to what the mortality rate that we saw in Mumbai and Delhi and other places. Now the mortality rate is relatively coming down in most of the centers, or if in India itself, as you take the state, the mortality levels comparable to other countries is relatively less because of the availability of the drugs and also the affordability of our patients, and also the state governments are also stocking these drugs. So this drugs is the one that is reduced, that will cure the disease and bring down the mortality rate. But immune boosters are helpful in increasing one's immunity, and if their immunity is quite good, they may not develop the kind of symptoms which the people which have less immunity develop.
Now that we were talking about the drugs, there have been a lot of questions. The Tamil Nadu government has been getting some medicines already. How comforting is this step, and how effective are the medications that have been recently approved for COVID-19?
Yeah, there are a lot of doctors. See, in a pandemic-like state, I don't think one should wait for a randomized control trials to go. So we go by the studies and we go by the experience. Japan and China have tried a lot of drugs for this coronaviruses. From 1980 onward, they have been trying, and therefore, for example, chloroquine itself was found to be in vitro very effective about this corona. So that's why we tried chloroquine in our country. A lot of antiviral drugs are also good. They all are good in reducing the symptoms of the disease and the severity of the disease. Whether they play a big role in the long-term mortality is anybody's guess. But since they do not cause any harm, or since we don't have any other drugs in this B2 and C states of this categories of this COVID-19 disease, definitely they help. And that's what I said. This lockdown has helped us to acquire these drugs, and we are not prepared. If you had seen in yesterday's papers, we have an idea of how many beds are available. It's a comforting statement actually. And we are discharging a lot of patients. In Tamil Nadu, if you see, a lot of patients are being discharged. That many beds are available in the same hospital to treat these people actually. So availability of drugs, stocking of these drugs, and the effectivity of the drugs is all quite good. That is why they have all been approved by the drug controller of India. And some more drugs are also going to come into the market to keep this disease at bay.
Okay. And what do you think about alternative medicine treatments? There have been a lot of claims and things, and there have been a lot of questions in our feed also about the views about other treatments like Siddha and Ayurveda, and we can see a lot of press releases and all being done now. What is your view on alternative medicine?
They're all complementary medications. When you don't have any medications when you did not have any specific antiviral medications to tackle this problem, there can be a complementary treatment. Siddha, Ayurveda, all these things can be combined. We are what we call it as an integrated treatment of corona disease. Like this Kavasura Kudi with Tamil Nadu is doing, adding zinc in the treatment, adding multivitamins, adding vitamin D, and this milk with haldi. All these things are all to improve one's immunity only. So once immunity is good, the further development of this thing can be prevented, but they are not cured for it. But as I said, they can combine with allopathic medication as an integral form of medication and tried in keeping this disease under control to some extent.
There have been a couple of questions about the people have asked. Earlier, it was very clear that people with comorbidity were getting more affected. But recently, we have started reading and hearing about people even in the late 30s and early 30s who are otherwise healthy are also having increasing mortality. Is there any specific reason, in your opinion, on this?
Yeah, this question was asked by me, rather by Hindu to me, as the reason why the death is increasing in youngsters. So my take on these people is there is a kind of a overconfidence among the youngsters. I still find a lot of people not wearing masks in Pani Bazars. If you go in some village worship, you see, I don't find people with masks. People who do not wear masks are people who think they are overconfident. That's what they get the disease. Number one. Number two is these people may be having some kind of an underlying immunosuppression. People who have developed youngsters, if you look into the statistics, majority of these people had one kidney or a juvenile diabetic or a chronic kidney disease, some problem, some valvular heart disease on medication, some problem or other. Most of these individuals who had this thing, mortality rate below 40 years were found. There are some this thing we are saying, but that number is relatively less compared to the people who have comorbids. So that is the reason why the stress is on to wear the mask. So masking is very important. When you're out of the house, you must wear a mask. And if masks are worn, the chances of one developing a serious disease, and especially in youngsters, is extremely low. That's number one. The second reason I think is in the early days there was some kind of an, as I said about the stigma. If you say there is a fever, and if he is a heading member of the family, and if he goes for a testing, he'll be quarantined for 14 days. So that fear has made some youngsters not to go to the centers. So that such people develop serious disease that they could have had the same problem. So that is being taken care of by now with this fever clinics and the containment zone, where compulsorily these people are tested if you are symptomatic.
Okay. So now that we are talking about fever, there is a question from one of the persons. Are there any chances of fever even after 14 days of incubation? Or should we think of any other infection, any other bacterial infection or viral infection apart from COVID, when the fever is persisting for a long time?
Yeah, usually the usual story of COVID is 3 days fever, like any other common cold. It comes, it hits you, you develop a cold, you develop a fever, we call it as category A COVID, we say they become alright. You just don't do testing also further. You don't need to test them also. If the fever persists beyond 14 days, that means you must look into whether he is developing a serious form of a COVID infection. A serious form of COVID infection usually manifests in the X-ray chest and the CT scan. If the CT scan is normal for this patient, he has a prolonged fever more than 14 days, and if your tests turned out to be negative, it is very obvious you don't have a COVID problem at all, you have some other problem. That's why is the importance of the question that you asked. You said, are we missing many non-COVID patients? This is most important thing. Many people think if you have fever, if I go to a fever center, I'll be tested for a COVID. So the cases like this will be missed. If you have a fever of more than 10 days or 14 days, and with the CD chest being normal, it is unlikely that you have a COVID problem. You have some other problem that needs an investigation. So nothing prevents, even at this stage, some other infection to affect an individual and cause a problem. That one should remember, and one should not hesitate to go to a doctor. That's the moral of that question.
Thank you. There's a lot of questions about cloth masks, surgical masks, or N95 masks. Are cloth masks really effective, or all people should wear surgical or N95 masks? What do you think about the thing? Because we see a lot of hawkers on the road selling cloth masks. Is it enough, or is it necessary to wear at least a surgical mask or an N95 mask?
No, it is not necessary to wear a surgical mask or N95 mask. Let us put it this way. N95 masks are very, very important in hot spots, that is in ICUs, COVID ICUs, in COVID wards where you wear a PP dress and then wear an N95 mask and go. That's important. If you want to prevent yourself from getting exposed to coronavirus, a surgical mask would suffice. Or if the surgical mask is something which cannot be avoided by on a daily basis, because surgical mask has to be used only once a day. N95 mask can be used for 4 days or 5 days. This surgical mask is daily investigation anymore. It may not be economically viable. In such cases, a mask that's sold in the junctions or the mask that is made at various centers, Tirupur and other cloth centers, they all started making masks with matching shirts and so on, or the handkerchiefs, provided you wash them on a daily basis and use them. That mask is more than sufficient actually. So mask is a must. It has to cover your nose and mouth and prevent the virus from entering into your system. So masks are very, very important. But N95 mask need not be worn by the normal situation. But something has to be there to cover that face and mouth.
Okay, that was very informative. And coming to the crux of our topic, there have been a lot of questions about, because now we have helpers at homes, watchmen and domestic help. So a lot of people have started asking, when can we let in our domestic help to help with our daily chores? Cooks, when can we let the cooks in? And what do you think are correct practices these helpers should follow when they come?
The principles for allowing these maids and cooks are more or less the same like we are for household people. So when she is coming from, if she is coming from a containment area, it is better to be careful with them until that area is containment free. If she is not, what we can do is when she comes home, if she comes from anything and her area is fairly okay and you are also living in a, she can come home, sanitizers, hand wash, and then masks on. She must come to the house. And then after coming home, she can take off her mask, and then if possible, if you can allow house dust can be given for a household people, the cooks and other things, and wash sanitizers and dress can be given to them. Use the same dress at home, and so evening when he leaves, the dress can be put for washing, and she can wear her dress and the mask and then go. So this is a good practice for any infection for that matter, not only for, because now we know that we have COVID amongst us, so we are taking extra care about it. We do not know that this patient might be having tuberculosis, she might not tell you, or there may be some tuberculosis patient at home and about which she may not be aware of. This is a practice which one should do for all the housemaids and cooks, because this is a good habit that Corona has brought to many people, to wash their hands and enter the house, to take care of their whatever they touch and whatever they do, how they should maintain themselves. I don't think we should worry greatly about them. We will start allowing these maids and cooks into your house with proper precaution that you take when you go out and come inside your house.
Okay. So once these workers are over, we have had a lot of news about these migrant laborers going back to their hometowns in crowded trains and buses. Do you think this would lead to a second wave of infection in the rural areas? Do you think we should be testing them more?
That's a good question. The behavior of the disease pattern, as I said, is different in different places. If you take our rural areas and our villages, you always have a lot of social distancing with them. When the social distancing is lost there, these migrant laborers who have gone into the villages, who have gone in crowded trains and crowded buses to their villages, no doubt some of them would have carried some viral infection with them, that most of them will be a subclinical infection in my opinion. When it is a subclinical infection, it goes unnoticed. And I don't think a remote village in, say, Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra or Gujarat would have facilities to go and check for this RT-PCR testing and so on. So when it goes and spreads, the herd immunity gets is developed faster in these rural areas because subclinical infection spreads across. There may be some people who get some disease. There may be some deaths because of this corona, but it may not be related to the corona. The difference between the urban and the rural is urban areas we get to know about the disease very fast because of the tracking, because of the media, and because of so many other things we get to know about them. Whereas in rural areas we doesn't know. In my opinion, trying to track these people who have gone out of the metropolis into their villages and test them for viruses, I don't think it is a wise thing to do because it is not possible to do it, to catch all subclinical corona infections and isolate them. It is practically and economically not a feasible thing. I don't think it is a good idea, and I don't think you are going to get the kind of the fear about the kind of a big wave of infection. There may be some small waves, cluster outbreaks might be there. I don't think you should greatly worry about them, as long as your mortality rate is under control. And as I said, as the days pass, we'll be getting closer to certain herd immunity, number one. Number two, certain drugs may be available in the market, which also might cut down the chain of transmission of infection, and hopefully some vaccines sometime in February, March.
Okay. We are all washing the vegetables before placing them in the fridge in the hope that this will help the spread of the virus. How long do you think this practice will continue? And as we are talking about washing vegetables, there have been some questions about UVC lights. There are people who are using UVC lights to sterilize the vegetables, and there have also been a question about UVC lights to sterilize medical equipment, especially in the OP setup, not in a hospital, in the OP setup. How do you think this UVC light is going to help us, and is it a reliable option? And how long do you think this practice of washing vegetables will continue?
Washing the vegetables, if you ask me, it's a very good habit which one has developed, and we must thank Corona for that. Not only the coronavirus will be prevented, other bacterial infections, other parasites, and other things that can come with the dirt, that can come with the vegetables, can be washed and used. That's a good habit. I don't think we should give up that habit of washing the vegetables and do that. But the fear of this is surface contact. That's where the whole thing comes from. The surface contact, the virus can stay on these surfaces for a long period. The problem is, when you bring it in plastic cover, what should we do? The plastic cover has to be discarded. But not with the fear that coronavirus will be there. You can discard them with fear. You need not wash them with sanitizers and do that. You have one cover. But it's different in a hospital where it is a hot spot, where you clean the PPE kit and you collect it separately and dispose them in a separate manner actually. That's a different ballgame altogether. Coming to the hospital, so vegetable washing is a very good habit which Corona has brought us, and that should be continued. As I said, this epidemic has brought in a lot of good habits. So cough hygiene is something which he kept on telling for tuberculosis control for so many years, which people never bothered. Now we have come to a stage where we don't cough in our elbows or in our palms, but we put a mask on our face. And I'm very sure in another 1 year time, you will find a decrease in tuberculosis incidence to a large extent in our country, thanks to Corona. Okay, that apart. Coming to the hospital, if you're cleaning the vegetables, the UV lamp, I don't think it is a wise thing to do. I think we'll lose the nutritional value of that. Equipment, yes. In the hospital, in a OP sitting, where the patient comes, while the patient is talking, or some people come in the habit of wearing a glove when coming to the OPD. So with that glove, they have gone around the place, they have come into the room and they touch the table and they touch your table. So there is a role for this. There is some role for this, we think. But that has to be used after you leave, not when you are in the hospital, because it has you will have certain harmful effects on human bodies.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answered a lot of questions. And how do you think? This I think is a very important question from my side. How do you think the general public we can help the government in control of the spread of the disease? What do you think is the role of the common man in the helping the government in controlling the spread of the disease in a pandemic situation?
I think you should now use the power of the people to contact this, say to contract this COVID-19 pandemic or epidemic actually. There is some kind of a disconnect between the government, the public, and the physicians and the people. For example, many doctors themselves are afraid of practicing. They think coming out itself they'll get corona, opening the dispensary they'll get corona infections. Many patients think going to hospitals and clinics they will get corona, they will get a disease, and it will be very difficult to handle it. Going to hospital is not safe. Coming on the roads is not safe. Many people think. And government also should not think that by putting lockdowns we will be able to control. So there has to be some kind of some joint effort by the public people. Like for example, I used to say in asthma control, I used to say when you want to make the inhalers popular, there's no point in talking only to one community, the doctors community alone. You must also talk to the patient, you must also talk to the government to make people know that inhalers are the best means of treating. Same way is this mask. So this mask is something which we should make people realize that very important, and we can involve some of these NGOs, non-government organizations like Rotaries and Lions and other clubs to supply these masks at a concessional price in areas where the social distancing may not be a difficult areas where masks can be supplied on a mass scale on a regular basis by several people. So it becomes a habit. You must develop that habit. If that happens, all these difficulties that we are facing now of flats being ordered, containment zones, the barricades, and all those things, government also will start coming down because we are not reciprocating the way we should reciprocate to the government's efforts. Some areas we will find people are finding it difficult to do that, and this disconnect has to be removed so that the public, private, and government participation becomes a big deal in controlling this COVID, which is extremely important because, as I said, the numbers are going to go up for another 1 or 2 months, and during these periods of thing, the public participation in the government's efforts is extremely important to them, and that's where the NGOs role of Rotary clubs and others in supplying and spreading the news across that corona is a disease not to be worried about. One should wear the mask, one should maintain the social distancing. All these things can be spread across.
Okay. We all had a life before corona. When do you think it might be safe for children to go to school again? And when do you think it might be safe for all of us to go to the hotel and have a cup of coffee and so many other day-to-day activities that which we have stopped for some time?
Yeah. Going to schools may not be racing because online learning is becoming more and more popular. May not be very good in certain things, but that's the thing, that's the way of life, and it will continue for another 2 or 3 months. The schools will be in the same pace because school children are super spreaders, though they don't suffer from disease due to a variety of reasons. So children have to be taken care of, not because they would go and develop the disease, but because they go to school and bring the disease back. We should see the peak, and after the peak is reached and then the peak starts coming down, only we can think of starting these schools and other things, which has happened in some countries like New Zealand and Vietnam, where they have almost controlled, and some countries have started opening up the schools. Listeners, in all these places, the fear of, as I said, cough, sneeze, and the surfaces make us fear that the virus might find its way again into the people who are vulnerable. So restaurants and other things also might be the same thing for some more time to come. Even under 2 or 3 months, it will go on for some time. But the congregation and other things, in my opinion, like temple festive gatherings and big time gatherings, maybe it will take some more time for them to start.
There's been one question that has been repeating again and again. Has community spread started in our country? What do you think about that?
In pockets, I think it has started. That's when we start speaking. The numbers start going up only when the community spread starts occurring. We are very close to that thing. Still not, I wouldn't say we are started in a very big way, but it has started in a couple of places. That's why you explain the some of the cases you are not able to explain. When you go for a contact tracing, you are not able to trace them sometimes. So it might have started or it might not have started, but we are very close to that phase of community transmission when the cases are going to go up. As I said, the numbers are not going to be a very big matter at all. We are going to have more numbers of people getting infected without any symptoms. As long as we are able to keep the mortality rates, that's what we should worry about. And as I said, that has been taken care of well by various factors in India. One is our obesity, and two is our capability to buy the new drugs that are come into the market, buy them and stock them and use them on the needy people whenever that is needed.
I think we have come to the end of the session. So I have the last question. What do you think is the end point of all this? Where do we see ourselves in the near future?
That's a very difficult question to answer because Corona has fooled many people. Even the best of epidemiologists, it has failed. There are people who are working statistics for a month, then for 15 days, then for 1 month. Now we are gone to a regional level of things. So many things are happening with regards to Corona. Now, what's the silver lining in our country is that we have a fairly large number of population, and we get herd immunity. Once we achieve that 50 to 60% target, we are likely to get that herd immunity. But my advice will be we should be able to get some big time celebrities to talk on the role of masks rather than talking more and more about the test at this stage. Because mask is something which is in everyone's hands, which he can use it, whether he is positive or negative, not the tests which are very important. So let's get some film celebrities who can play a major role if they play that masks are important. Masks should be used to prevent and keep Corona away by using these masks. That will be a very big thing that can happen for a good control of this Corona epidemic.
I think we'll end the live session now. Thank you all for the wonderful questions and participating in a very interactive way. This is what makes this session very useful and informative for all. We will be back with another session which is of interest to the common man, maybe in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Narasimhan, for taking your time off on this Sunday.
Thank you, Ajay. And thank you all for your active participation.